What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are assembling the Chicago electric welding table from Harbor Freight. Now, the instructions for this are crap. The table for all the hardware is useless, so I figured that I would go ahead and make an assembly video for anybody struggling to put this thing together or just wanting a little bit more direction on how to get this thing assembled. Let's go. Alright, so before we jump right in, I just wanted to say if you find this video helpful, make sure you leave it a like down below. Really helps me out, helps the channel grow. And if you want to see the unboxing of my Prime Weld TIG 225 TIG welding machine that I just got, that is going to be the next video on the channel, so make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can check that one out too. Now, let's jump into it. Alright, let's talk about the hardware first. We have an assortment of bolts in the M8 size of varying lengths. We also have 4 M5 bolts with their own nuts and washers. We have a handful of additional washers and large ring washers, in addition to these somewhat unique flat bolts. However, I have seen some kits come with wing nuts here. You will need a 13mm socket and wrench for the M8 bolts, an 8mm socket for the M5 bolts, as well as a Phillips head screwdriver. Here we have the vertical posts and the angle brackets, the support braces and the tabletop brackets. Of course, we have the legs of the table, and finally the zinc-plated steel tabletop. Alright, first we'll be connecting the angle brackets to the vertical posts using the two M8x45 bolts. I'm using the 13mm socket and wrench to get these partially tightened down, but not fully tight just yet. One thing you will want to make sure of is that the brackets go on the opposite side from the welded on nut. This will be important later on. Next, we'll get the legs connected to these vertical posts. I'm using the 4 M8x50 bolts, and again, I'm using the 13mm socket to get these snugged up. One thing I do want to mention about this is that the angle brackets should be facing outward when you're getting the vertical post bolted on. This is how the handles will be used to adjust the angle. I'm just getting the second vertical post bolted together, and as you can see, the fit is not quite perfect. This is a Harbor Freight piece after all. You don't really expect the highest degree of quality control. Now this last bolt hole just didn't want to line up unless it was at a weird angle, and I ended up having to massage it a bit just to get it to stand upright. I got the bolts tightened down and eventually got rid of the wobble. This next piece is just another supporting brace. I'm using the number 17 M8x60 bolts that have the Phillips head instead of the 13mm, so we just use a screwdriver for this one. Now it's time to attach our handles. These handles actually have the M8x55 bolts already in them, and this took me forever to figure out as it seemed like these were two different pieces of hardware. Now this is where those welded on nuts come into play. These are what the adjustment handles thread into and why they need to be positioned this way. The table that I got already had this next brace installed, but if yours does not, then this is where your number 24 M5x10 bolts would be used. Now let's move on to the tabletop. I'm using the M5x16 bolts with the Phillips head to attach the tabletop brackets, and I'm using an 8mm socket for the nuts. You'll want to make sure that the vertical face of the bracket is facing the center of the tabletop, as these will slide in between the angle brackets on the vertical posts. These are some of the only nuts and bolts that I will fully tighten before the final assembly, as I know these pieces won't be moving. Once I get these tightened down on one side, we'll just rinse and repeat for the other. Alright, let's get this tabletop attached to the rest of the frame. I'm using the 4 M8x16 bolts to secure the brackets we just installed on the tabletop to the holes in the half circular angle bracket. Again, you want these tabletop brackets to go on the inside of the angle brackets. And once again, we are using the 13mm socket and wrench to get these bolts tightened down. And now for the finishing touches. We have these guide rails which also function as backstops. Place the bottom flat piece facing downward and we'll be using these flap bolts to secure them. You may have wingnut style bolts here, but it all works the same. Place a washer on the bolt and thread it directly into the side of the tabletop. Do this for both the long and short rails, and you're pretty much done. And there you have it. Now your table is fully assembled. It is adjustable in terms of the angle of the head, so if you want to go from flat to an angle or even to vertical, all you have to do is loosen the handles on either side, adjust whatever angle you want, and lock it back down. And so it actually becomes relatively low profile at this point when it's vertical. So if you just need to get it out of the way, if you just need to store it, it's really good for that. So one of the benefits of this table that I showed you guys earlier when we were putting this together is that it has these brackets for backstops. So if you're putting any of your work up against a surface and you need something to essentially hold it in place or back it up against, you can actually use both of them together to get a 90-degree into this corner. And if you need to get them out of the way, you essentially just loosen these little flap bolts, more or less. You loosen those up, it drops down out of the way. You tighten it back down, and now you're good to go. If you need to hang anything off of both sides of the surface, you're good to go. So that is gonna wrap it up for this one, guys. If you found this video helpful, please leave it a like down below. Helps me out, helps the channel grow. If you wanna see more of my channel, more welding stuff, my K-Swap Subaru BRZ, which is gonna be coming over the next few weeks and months as more parts come in and I actually, jump right into the swap, make sure you subscribe to the channel and we'll see you guys on the next one.